While one man's trash is another man's treasure, so there's no way of definitively saying which games are terrible and which ones are amazing, there are certainly those games that most of us can agree are disappointing at best and hot garbage at worst. Those are the games you'll be encountering on this list, which, for a variety of reasons, made the seriously don't bother lists of gamers around the world when they launched to whatever the opposite of critical acclaim is. Of course, few things in life are top to bottom bad, and even though most of these games are pretty much completely bad, they all had one amazing level that, if somehow we could just remove it from the rest of the game, is totally worth playing. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 9 amazing levels trapped in terrible video games. Number 9. Mission 5, The Raven, Aliens Colonial Marines. Starting off strong with a game I'm pretty sure most of you will agree is terrible before I have to get into some of my more divisive picks later on, we've got one of the universally agreed upon worst games ever made, Aliens Colonial Marines. But this is a 7-hour game, surely not all of it is a trash fire, right? Well, as long as you like stealth, you hit the nail on the head with that one. One of the most disappointing things about most alien-inspired video game endeavors is that they don't replicate the tension and fear present in the films. This was a criticism levied at Aliens Colonial Marines, and for the most part, it was well deserved. Except for Mission 5 The Raven, where it actually goes full alien isolation in the best possible way. You lose your weapons and are instructed to try and escape, moving through flooded rooms and air vents while a massive xenomorph bursts out of the ceiling at random intervals. In the flooded area, you're told you need to move slowly and put away your torch so as not to awaken any of the dormant aliens around you, while avoiding the ones roaming the area. This is one of the only times you feel genuinely vulnerable, and it absolutely works, stripping away almost all of the ambient sound and letting you simmer in terror. It's genuinely spooky, and while this flash of brilliance doesn't last all that long, the worst thing we can say about it is that it shows what Aliens Colonial Marines could have been. Number 8. Liam's Loyalty Mission, Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda isn't Aliens Colonial Marines level bad, but for patient Mass Effect fans who had their hopes all the way up for another iconic sci-fi adventure, it may as well have been. The charismatic squad mates we'd come to know and love weren't up to snuff, the narrative felt empty and lacking, the graphics kinda sucked, and that BioWare magic just wasn't there. Of course, it only makes sense that a team capable of bringing us so many tremendously well-written games wouldn't completely fumble when it comes to the writing in Andromeda, and indeed there are some bright spots in the otherwise dull and boring galaxy. Mass Effect's loyalty missions have always been some of the best quests in the game, and in Andromeda there are some really good ones. Liam's in particular, where he asks you to, and I quote, hit the go button, shoot pirates, and save people, is not only fun as hell, the writing is genuinely really funny. From the entertaining interplay between your squad mates to the twists and turns of the mission and great level design, this mission brings you right back to the best space cowboy vibes of the original trilogy. Perhaps most entertaining is whenever the main villain calls in, it becomes clear he's playing his own sinister theme music. Honestly, it's enough to make me want to give Andromeda another go. Almost. Number 7. Central City Dark Mission, Shadow the Hedgehog. Some people might call Sega's 2005 platformer Shadow the Hedgehog underrated, and others would just call it crap. But when it launched, the consensus was largely that its themes didn't work, its controls didn't work, and its level design didn't work. This hot mess isn't end-to-end bad though, there are actually a few really good missions in here, and one of those is Central City Dark Mission. Central City is interesting because there's no goal ring here. You're just setting out to explore and attempt to find and detonate 5 bombs in order to destroy the city. There's loads of enemies to take out, a massive area to zip around and build up momentum, and the music in the level absolutely slaps. The level design is also great with plenty of conveniently located ramps so you can get your speed on. Admittedly, there is a time limit, so this level isn't everybody's favorite, but once you get the hang of it, there's loads of fun to be had here. And by here, I of course mean in this one level in what is otherwise a pretty ordinary game. Number 6. Vermillion Destroyer, Mighty Number 9. We've cheated just a little here because technically Vermillion Destroyer is the DLC for Mighty Number 9, but given the original game was so critically panned, we had to stretch all the way out to extended content to mine a great level out of this one. Mighty Number 9 was an infamous Kickstarter failure that massively overpromised and underdelivered. It was criticized for poor design, unimpressive graphics, bad voice acting, a lackluster story, and crappy technical performance. Basically, all of the things a game could get wrong, this one got wrong. So it's probably not too surprising that the game takes until the DLC to start to come into its own. This is where you meet Beck's rival Ray, otherwise known as the Vermillion Destroyer, and have multiple face-offs. The design, layout, and enemy engagements here are noticeably better than they have been in the rest of the game, and the final boss fight is satisfyingly challenging without being unfair. There's also some genuinely cool environment design throughout. Perhaps the best bit here is that once you finish Ray off, she becomes a playable character, and according to the few people who managed to play this far into Mighty Number 9, she's pretty fun. Number 5. The Mistress of Mystery, Fallout 76. Fallout 76 made a Mass Effect Andromeda-sized oops when it took everything that everybody loved about its predecessors and threw it out the window in favor of a bunch of features and mechanics that nobody really wanted in the first place. While Fallout 76 has since come full circle with some solid new DLC and realized that maybe it should have included NPCs and embraced solo players from the beginning, not everything about the vanilla release was awful. While a bunch of people gave up on it too early to find out, myself included, there are a bunch of really good quests in here. And yes, in this instance, we're saying a quest line is a level, just go with me. The Mistress of Mystery quest is as intriguing as the name implies. The character actually first makes an appearance in Fallout 4, but in Fallout 76, you're chasing down what exactly happened to Olivia Rivers, her mother, and the Order of Mysteries. To tell you here would be giving it away, but suffice it to say, this quest is one that works best because it actually takes advantage of the world state where there are no NPCs. The mystery unravels through your own investigation, and it has that classic Fallout grade writing that everyone went into 76 hoping to find. It might not be enough to get you to go back into Fallout 76, but for those who were sticking it out, it was an enjoyable find. Number 4. Ancient Cistern, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I'll level with you here, this is the most divisive entry on this list where you'd be excused for saying I can't really call Skyward Sword a terrible game. But I think we can all agree it's an arguably great game that was buried under some atrociously unreliable controls when it first released. So let's take this one with a big grain of salt, depending on whether you're a Skyward Sword fan or not, while we talk about one of the game's levels which we can all agree is amazing, no matter which of the Skyward Sword hate fence you land on. Is including Skyward Sword here just an excuse to talk about the phenomenal game design feat that is Ancient Cistern? Look, maybe, but it's totally worth it. The whip is one of the items that works really well with the Wiimote control system. The final boss battle with Coloctus is fantastic, and it's just a gorgeous dungeon to explore. Ancient Cistern also manages to pull off what many gamers assumed was impossible. It makes a water level actually enjoyable. Despite being extraordinarily pretty and fun to play through, it's worth noting the backstory of the level is based upon a children's fable written to describe some of the principles of Buddhism which illustrate the concept of karma. A lot of things in the level mirror specific instances called out in the fable. That doesn't necessarily make it more fun to play, it's just really cool. Number 3. Inami Temple, Mega Man X6. Much like the Sonic franchise, the Mega Man franchise has had so many entries that it really runs the gamut as far as quality is concerned. 2001's Mega Man X6 is certainly on the way less good end of Mega Man games. Again, it might not be as bad as some of the games on this list, but it massively disappointed many fans upon release. There's some suggestion that this is because the game was made without Keiji Inafune's involvement, but it was also criticized for its ill-advised nightmare system, repetitive stages, and bland level design. Not every level though, otherwise of course you wouldn't be seeing it on this list. Enter Inami Temple. This is Rainy Turtleoid stage, where you'll have to contend with a slew of enemies, acid rain, and search for a handful of cores. The Japanese temple aesthetic of the level is really cool, the shift to a focus on exploration is refreshing, and there are some delightfully challenging platforming sections. If every level in the game was as good as this one, a bunch of outlets probably wouldn't have called it disappointing upon release, but they're not, so here we are. Number 2. The Whiteboard level, Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever sucks. This is a pretty well-known video game fact, and you probably don't need me to roll through it again. Basically, the game took forever to come out, and when it finally did, it wasn't the game anybody wanted it to be. The humor was dated, the graphics were bad, and every shred of Duke Nukem delight had been sucked out of the game. So what could possibly make anything worthwhile in a game this infamously bad? Well, an intro sequence with a whiteboard. Is it possible everyone loved this whiteboard so much because the rest of the game was an exercise in tedium and mediocrity? Look, maybe. But this whiteboard is fantastic. For some reason, a game this bad has a whiteboard you can draw on, and don't worry if this sounds fun and you want to check it out because it's right at the beginning of the game. The The possibilities with said whiteboard are endless, and there are plenty of images and videos you can check out to see what players managed to do with it. It's completely irrelevant to the game because no matter what you draw, you'll hear, "Oh man, good plan, Duke," over and over again. Although with a game this terrible, I think we can all agree that a level with no relevance to the rest of it is probably a good thing. Before the game totally goes to crap, this level also lets you fish a poop out of a toilet, kill off an enormous cycloid alien on a football stadium using rockets, and score a field goal by yeeting the beastie's eyeball. The best bit is really the whiteboard though. Number 1, Crisis City, Sonic 06. There have been a bunch of games on this list that I'm sure someone will want to argue that said game in question is actually good, which is why I've rounded off with a game I'm almost certain you'll agree is awful, and that's Sonic 06. Critically panned, this one was riddled with glitches, an unbelievably frustrating camera, a weird plot, and, well, GameSpot called it a top-to-bottom mess, so that probably sums it up best. Although there was a bright spot in this top-to-bottom mess, and that's Crisis City. For a brief shining moment, the Sonic magic returned. This stage is fast, exciting, the music is excellent, the gradually crumbling cityscape is very cool to traverse, and the entire level is just epic. This is another great example of a level that shows what could have been if the engine could handle the game the developers were trying to make. The level is reused in Sonic Generations for a good reason, and if you can check this one out without being brought down by any glitches, it's not hard to see why. The story may have been surprisingly dark and the mechanics inconsistent, but for whatever reason in this particular level, everything just works. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other amazing levels trapped in terrible games. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.